So this is going to be a video featuring the blouse that I showed in my last thrift haul. So I actually got this dress for $7 and transformed it into a top. And this was the clip that you saw in the last video. And I just wanted to show you guys what this blouse looks like now. But it was actually a dress when I bought it. And I just wanted to show you guys how I made this. So to start off, I am placing it on the floor with one of my vintage blouses that I actually like the length of. Now I like this length because it is nice for tucking into trousers, as you saw in my little try-on clip right before this. So I'm just going to cut off a little bit below where that shirt measures on the floor. Then I'm going to go ahead and take a similar colored thread. This is a slightly off-white, sort of a yellowed white, to match the fabric of the shirt as best as I could. I didn't want to go out and buy a new thread, so I just went with the closest one that I had, and I think it actually worked really well. And then I'm going to go ahead and just pin the shirt a little bit above where my initial measurement line was. That's just to hide the chalk that I used to draw the line. I like to draw my lines a little bit below and then cut a little bit further below, just to ensure that I have enough space between where I'm going to hem it and the fabric that I'm going to cut off later. Then, as you can see, I'm just pushing this into my sewing machine and going to town. You'll notice here the fabric is going back and forth, and that's just to keep a secure line. So on a sewing machine, it's definitely helpful if you hit the back button a few times when you're first starting your stitch. And I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this all the way around. And again, you could hand sew this. I've hand sewn so many hems at this point. It's definitely something that I enjoy doing. I like doing invisible stitches on garments, but for this one, if I'm completely honest, hand sewing is pretty easy, but it's also very time consuming, and I just didn't want to wait for this top, which is why I am using the sewing machine. And then I'm going to go ahead and just cut off that extra fabric, as you can see here. Just be really careful when you're doing hems, you guys, and you're cutting off that extra fabric. Make sure what you're cutting off is the additional fabric and you're not going through to the bottom layers. And as you can see right here, I actually accidentally pulled out some of the liner, which isn't too big a deal. I can go ahead and re-sew that line if I need to, but it is something to look out for. And as you can see, this is the finished product. You've already seen the finished product 3 times now, but I just figured I would show you again. Okay, so it's just DIY day. I'm gonna go ahead and cuff these little shorts. They used to be trousers, but I liked them better as shorts. They're cute little vintage cherries by the brand Briggs, and I love them. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna cuff them and make them look cute, and I'm gonna do that with you guys. Okay, so like I just said, I'm gonna go ahead and hem these as well. So I am just pinning where I want these short cuffs to be. And here you can see me demonstrating the backwards function on my sewing machine, like I mentioned for the blouse. So what I do, especially for these thicker fabrics here, is I will press start on my sewing machine, and then really quickly I will hit the backup button, and it will just go over that point a few times, just to ensure that the stitch is very strong and it'll last a long time. And then I'm just going through removing the pins as I do and adjusting my fabric, making sure that my lines are fairly straight. For things like this, I may be a bad DIYer for this, but I really don't mind if my lines aren't incredibly straight. I'm pretty new at sewing and I just want to get it done. I will occasionally go back and redo things if it is particularly abominable, but for something like this where you're not even really going to notice the stitching, you know what I mean? Like, no one's gonna be looking at the stitching with these shorts. Like, it's just not a thing. So they turned out really cute. I really like them. The zipper on this one definitely is a little bothersome. I may replace that in the future, but for right now, I think these are a super cute addition to my wardrobe. And they've got little vintage cherries all over them. How cute is that?
Well, brats, how does it feel to know you won't be around for the return of shoulder pads?
All right, so for my masks, I am just tracing outside the lines of one of my masks that fits really well on my face. So you want to make this bigger for when you sew the mask together. Basically, you want it to be oversized, and you can always take fabric away, but you cannot add more once it's cut, basically. So here's a little bit better of an angle of that here, so you can see I'm just tracing the general shape around the mask just to make sure my proportions are right. But for the most part, I just need this to be large and in charge. And then I'm going to cut out 2 panels of the fabric for each mask. And aside from these 2 panels, I will also be cutting out 4 sheets per side of plain white 100% cotton. So all of this fabric is 100% cotton, and I am just picking out 4 white cotton sheets for each underside of the mask, plus the base of the mask, which is the pattern fabric, the part that you guys are going to see on the outside when you're wearing it. And this is just to create a layered effect that will help you stay safe when you're outside. So once I'm done cutting out my patterns, basically, I am just going to actually take my flat iron here and basically iron the fabric out just so that it is as flat and straight and non-creased as possible. And this is just so that it's easier to sew. And this is just me tracing out the white cotton that I'll be using for the internal layers of the mask. So again, I'm using 4 sheets per side of the mask. That's going to be 8 plain white cotton sheets per side, plus the 5th side of the mask, which is going to be the external part. And then you can also, with the masks that I'm making here, I left the additional fabric that I fold in. It's a little confusing to explain, but I left the additional fabric that folds in when you sew it, like the seams. I left that on my masks so that I could pop a filter into there as well and just make them additionally safe. Now I'm going to take all of these layers, all 8 layers of my fabric, and I'm going to go ahead and sew the nose and the front facing portion of the mask first, good sides facing together. So same way you would sew anything else, you're going to put your good sides together. So the outside of the fabric, you're going to put them together and sew them so that it ends up looking like this. So when you open it, the right side is out. Then I'm going to go ahead and fold the insides around all of the mask. Kind of hard to see what I'm doing here, but I'm just putting 1 pin into each fold, basically. So I'm just creating a clean line. And then I'm going to do a clean line all around the sides of the mask, like so that I have those clean edges and so that it fits my face better. You can do this, again, if you make a mistake and if your mask is too big. In between these, I would put the mask on my face to make sure it wasn't too big or too small. But if you do make it too big or too small, you can always seam rip your thread and then try again. I recommend after you sew each panel, hold it up to your face and just make sure that it actually fits you and that you're actually doing this so that it fits your face. I actually made one of these masks that's not in this video, and it was so tiny. It was literally made for a child. I really dropped the ball with that one, so that mask is not gonna be used for me. Then I'm just going ahead and taking the sides and sewing those shut after I insert my elastic for the ears. And then I'm going ahead and I'm tying that off. And then I'm going to slip the tied end into the mask. So I'm just going to pull it until you can't see where it's tied anymore. So you just see the round little elastic ear loop. And there is your completed mask. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me while I make these cute little DIYs. I do hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!